Why someone leaves California every 2 minutes.
And that hypocrisy and irony starts with questions about price increases. It was the failed economic policies, one self-inflicted failed economic policy after the other, that created the worst inflation crisis in a half a century. Unbridled spending, if you add the hikes in interest rates, it would be about $12 trillion in deficit spending.
Welcome back to the program. What we just witnessed at the House Ways and Means Committee hearing is the absolute definition of a political reality check. Representative Jodey Arrington didn't just show up to talk about numbers. He came to completely dismantle the corporate bureaucratic gaslighting that has been shoved down the throats of the American people for years. From a conservative Republican perspective, this hearing cuts right to the heart of fiscal responsibility and everyday survival. For too long, the establishment left has tried to lecture working-class families on affordability, while simultaneously voting for the multi-trillion-dollar spending sprees that triggered this historic inflation crisis in the first place. When the opposition tried to shift the blame away from their failed economic policies, Arrington laid down an absolute masterclass in holding Washington accountable. He completely flipped the script, exposing the staggering hypocrisy of politicians who set the economic house on fire and now want to act like heroes. If you want to see exactly how a true America First conservative shreds the swamp's double standards to pieces, you have to watch this incredible exchange. If you are ready for honest conservative analysis without the mainstream media spin, subscribe and turn on notifications right now.
The opportunity for that.
The Congresswoman is slanderous. She has nothing but the unsubstantiated opinions, and I will not stand for that. There is nothing corrupt. We move at the highest levels. And just because she cannot get the answer she wants, if she would like to give me facts, she seems long on facts, short on facts, long on hot air, and I will not stand for that. Yeah, that's great.
Mr. Arrington is recognized.
Disgrace to make a remark like that.
Apparently, my colleagues had a sudden interest in the rule of law. I wonder if you asked her if she thought illegal immigrants should be detained and deported or caught and released, what the answer would be.
Well, and Congressman, and two, on inflation, I am not going to take firefighting advice from an arsonist.
Well, Mr. Secretary,
they torch the American
Mr.
people.
Secretary, maybe we ought to ask the question:
inflation.
should the sons of presidents who have multiple felony convictions, should they be held to the same standard of the American people in terms of crime and punishment? I wonder what the answer to that question would be. Let's not veer off. Apparently, wages and take-home pay aren't the only thing up in this country. Irony and hypocrisy is at an all-time high among my Democrat colleagues.
Now we see why someone leaves California every 2 minutes.
And that hypocrisy and irony starts with questions about price increases. It was the failed economic policies, one self-inflicted failed economic policy after the other, that created the worst inflation crisis in a half a century. Unbridled spending, if you add the hikes in interest rates, it would be about $12 trillion in deficit spending. Waiving work requirement for able-bodied adults on welfare, giving welfare and health care to illegal immigrants with the stroke of a pen by President Biden, layers of taxes on American competitiveness, layers of regulation on our small businesses. And you know what? We pay a premium right now, and we will temporarily, to defend our country, our children's future against a nuclear Iran, against a radical terrorist regime where we are under imminent threat. We will pay a premium at the pump. But gas prices were at a low, 2-decade low in terms of disposable income. We had gas prices before the conflict below $3. President Biden and 4 years of Democrat policies, gas prices went from $3.30 to $5. Now, we pay a premium for national security in times of conflict, and when we have imminent threat, we're trying to stave off another addition, nuclear power to the axis of evil. But the premium that the Democrat policies imposed on the American people was for what? A mandate for electric vehicles? What did we get for that premium? We got hundreds of billions of dollars. It was supposed to be 200 billion. 800 plus billions of dollars in giveaways, corporate subsidies for green energy. That's what the American people got. You know, they got higher energy prices, higher electric bills because of this radical climate agenda, the Green New Disaster, and that was the trade-off from my Democrat colleagues. So a little context to this conversation, I think, is helpful. The results, as you know, Mr. Secretary, were that the American people every year were losing $3,000 in wages, that they had a 21% regressive tax hike, 21%. They were losing $1,500 a year. I mean, are we in the golden age? Well, relative to the dark ages that we were thrust in by these failed policies, we are at the dawn of a golden age because wages are up. Take-home pay is up. GDP, you said, is 2.6%. Well, that's a percent over what CBO said after we passed the big, beautiful bill. And on an annual average basis in a budget window, that's $3 trillion to reducing the deficit, which may be why the deficit was reduced over 10% in the first 6 months of this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year, because we actually controlled discretionary spending and have saved up to now almost $500 billion. It's because Republicans actually cared about not frittering away tax dollars, and we rooted out waste, fraud, and abuse to a tune of over $1 trillion because we had quadruple revenue from having restructured World Trade Order and set a level playing field for our farmers and manufacturers. Because of all of that plus the growth, we have had a reduction in the deficit to GDP for the first time in almost a decade. I'm out of time. I think you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Don't listen to the noise.
No, I don't, sir. Look, they don't want to talk about how they voted to cut the child tax credit in half for 40 million people, voted for higher rates on low and middle income families, for a $5 trillion tax hike. And if I were the Democrats, this side of the aisle, I would be terrified how many Americans applied for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, reduced taxes on Social Security, and deductibility of auto loans.
7.5 million no tax on tips, 29 million overtime, seniors 35 million.
Mr. Arrington, your time has expired.
Unbelievable. Keep up the good work, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Ms. Delvey.
What an absolute knockout blow by Chairman Jodey Arrington. If you ever want a textbook example of why the establishment left is completely terrified of sharp, unfiltered conservative lawmakers, just replay that clip. Arrington didn't just walk into that committee room looking for a standard soundbite. He walked in prepared to deliver a devastating truth bomb on behalf of every American family currently struggling to buy groceries. Let's break down the sheer gravity of what was exposed here. For years, the progressive narrative has been that their massive, bloated spending bills and heavy-handed regulations were designed to help the middle class. But what Arrington did was force the committee to confront the devastating, mathematically undeniable reality of their policies, a crushing erosion of middle-class purchasing power and an absolute destruction of the American dream. Think about the absolute brilliance of the core argument. When Arrington looked across the aisle and stated that he refuses to take firefighting advice from an arsonist when it comes to economic policy, he captured the exact frustration felt by millions of citizens. Isn't it remarkable how career politicians can actively print trillions of dollars, fuel a cost of living crisis, and then have the audacity to sit on a committee dais and lecture the reformers trying to clean up their mess? It's the ultimate double standard, and it's exactly why the populist coalition, including the Trump, RFK Jr., and MAGA movement, is gaining so much momentum. The establishment creates the crisis through systemic overreach and fiscal irresponsibility, and then demands even more government control to fix the damage they caused. From a policy and constitutional perspective, what conservatives should love about this exchange is Arrington's unyielding focus on accountability. He didn't let them hide behind scripted bureaucratic talking points. He put the blame exactly where it belongs, on a bloated federal government that treats taxpayer money like a bottomless piggy bank. The political implications of this exposure are massive. By framing the debate so clearly, Arrington has drawn a definitive line in the sand. He has provided a perfect roadmap for how conservative leaders can legally and rhetorically unpack the damage done to our economy, forcing true transparency back into the legislative process. Ultimately, this exchange is going to have a profound impact on public opinion because it strips away the political theater. When regular Americans look at the raw facts Arrington presented, they don't see a regular partisan disagreement. They see an elite political class that is entirely out of reality. The opposition thought they could rewrite history and dodge responsibility, but Arrington brought the receipts, proving once again that common sense and conservative principles will always win the day.